Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Royal Christmas Cruise, a Stonewall Investigations Miami holiday story by Max Walker. Narrated by Greg Boudreaux. 1. Nicholas Silva. The kisses came at me like mosquitoes fighting to get through a protective net. Fast, sharp, unwelcome. Her lips pecked at my neck first, like she was searching for some sort of weak spot where she could break skin and suck out my blood. I wondered briefly if I should let her, just succumb to the blood draining, like I'd succumbed to being in this fraud of a relationship for 2 years now. Also, Papi and Mommy could live happy, knowing their little prince was finding himself a queen. I rolled onto my side, cutting off the kisses. She huffed a breath of air before I felt the bed tremble as she fell back on it. I kept my eyes trained forward, on my chipped dresser, set so that it blocked half of the window, keeping the dusty red curtain permanently closed. I hated the view. It reminded me of a prison. Keeping it shut meant I could lie on my bed without having to look out at the constant reminder of my situation. The only reason I even knew it was midday was because the sunlight barreled through the unblocked side of the window, throwing half my room into light and the other into shadow. "What's going on, Nick? ¿Qué pasa?" The question didn't come out of the blue. Cristela was a very caring, very empathetic woman, which made this situation all the more difficult. She was a proper girl, and a beautiful one, I'd admit. I've come to learn that she wasn't my type in the slightest, but her beauty could never be denied. I rolled over, facing her, looking into those doe-like green eyes, some of the waves of her silky brown hair cresting across her forehead, hiding a couple of freckles that dotted her flawless skin. Her pouty lips looked extra pouty. Normally I would kiss her until I got a smile. I had always felt like that's what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to act. So I had. But not today, not after this morning. There would be no more kisses. "You're scaring me." Her eyes bounced between mine. "You're scaring a lot of us. You've just been in your room for hours, days. You missed the dinner yesterday, and you missed the fundraising lunch last weekend. That was one of your favorite events of the entire year, and you wouldn't even tell me why." Because I can't look into anyone's eyes anymore, not without thinking I'm a fucking fraud. "I haven't been feeling well," I answered, giving my default response to any similar questions hurled my way over the past couple of months. Cristela wasn't the only one who could pick up on my shift in attitude. Both my parents had briefly brought it up over dinner about 2 weeks ago. The conversation lasted approximately 3 minutes before my dad began talking about the preparations for the Christmas festival. "But why?" Cristela had determination in her eyes. She wasn't letting this go for idle chat over holiday decorations. "What's going on in that head of yours?" "A storm," I said, being honest for once in what felt like months. "I can't even pull out a single thought." "Try. For me?" The thunderclouds filling my head exploded with lightning. "That's the thing, Cristela. I need to do the opposite. I have to try for myself now." "What are you talking about?" I stared at the beauty mark that dotted her skin near the dip of her Cupid's bow. "I've been living for what everyone else wanted of me. The prince, an heir to a throne that doesn't even hold any power anymore. It's all just dressing on a set. People fall for it because it glitters under the light, but when the lights turn off, it all gets dark just like everything else. I've been living a lie for what? To make my parents happy? To keep the tabloids quiet?" Cristela's eyes were filling with worry. A crease appeared between her thin brows. She started fiddling with her earlobe, something she always did when she became anxious. "Don't talk about your family like that." She didn't get it. They weren't family. They were prison guards, keeping my true self stuffed deep down inside the darkest dungeon imaginable, somewhere devoid of any kind of light. Not anymore, though. Not anymore. I can't keep this in. I sat up in bed, leaning back on the plush bed frame, the soft white pleated velvet caressing my bare back. "Keep what in? What are you talking about, Nicholas?" I wanted to shout it then, wanted even the guards standing outside the palace gates to hear me. The words almost fell from me, but they hit a barricade somewhere in my chest. I stopped myself. Breaking up with my girlfriend would cause big enough waves. Was I ready to proclaim why I had broken up with her? Was I ready to tell everyone that I was gay? No. The answer right then and there was no. I mulled over my thoughts, warding away the fears that nipped at my heels like hungry wolves. What happened, Nick? Everything was fine this morning. We had a beautiful breakfast and a great chat over coffee. You seemed so optimistic, happy even. And then you go for a walk to Hightower Bridge, and the moment you get back, you act totally different. What happened to you on that walk? Everything happened. Nothing happened. There was no way I could dive into that right now. I could only skate above it, briefly. I realized some things this morning, things I'd been thinking about a lot. And one of those things is, I had to word this exactly right. I hadn't prepared for this at all. I don't think I'm right for you. I've realized this isn't going to work. Shock seemed to have slapped her across the face. A rabbit-like sound slipped from her lips, like a frightened animal meeting its certain end. I'm sorry, I offered, as if that would somehow soothe the gaping wound on her heart. A wound I was sure grew larger by the second, by every accelerated thump. Cristela was right in saying that this morning had been great. I woke up feeling better than I had felt in a long while, and that all might have been because of a dream I had woken up from, one that still lingered on my thoughts throughout the day, phantom kisses lingering on my lips. It hadn't been a dream of me and Cristela, or of me and Angelina Jolie, or any other woman for that matter. The dream, painted in Technicolor bold and still replaying in my head, had me rolling across an infinite meadow of brightly colored poppies and daisies and sunflowers and lavender, their petals all throwing off rays of rainbow light as our two naked bodies writhed and our moans rose up to color the skies, which were dashes of pink and blue and orange and purple. Soon the meadow of flowers disappeared and the two of us were resting on a private island, golden sand glittering underneath us, slipping between our toes and our fingers as we moved into new positions, fucking and stroking and kissing. I never remembered dreaming in such vivid color, never. Me and the man spent a night more passionate than I had spent with Cristela in the 2 years we'd been together. This dream had felt more real to me than any of the empty nights I had gone through the motions just to have sex with my own girlfriend. And so yes, I was happy during our breakfast. But as Cristela cheerily listed out all the things she wanted to do in America for our holiday trip, I knew that my heart was somewhere far, far from the table. I wasn't happy because of her. Not at all. At the same time, I couldn't be fully honest with her. If I told her I was breaking up with her because I was gay, then 1, I'd always remember my first time coming out as something terrible, and 2, it would be front-page news within the hour. I didn't want to risk that. I had to beat around the bush without beating up her heart too badly in the process. I still cared about her as a friend, and even though all throughout university I'd been rumored to be an overly cocky and heartbreaking guapo by the Spanish papers, an image that ended up sticking, in reality, that portrayal of me wasn't true at all. I cared deeply about the people in my life, even if very few of them seemed to care much about me. How? Why? Cristela said, her upper lip beginning to shake. Cristela Montenegro, the only girl who had broken through the protective bubble I'd put up and actually lasted as my girlfriend for longer than 6 months. Mainly because she had been forcibly pushed past it by my parents, who saw their young prince growing up without ever having one stable relationship, without ever finding his queen. Did I do something? She continued. ¿Qué hice? You did nothing, I said, once again finding an opportunity to be absolutely truthful. It has nothing to do with you. So what exactly are you saying? I'm saying I can't be in this relationship anymore, Cristela. I just can't. She shook her head, wiped at her cheeks. The skin around her neck and over her chest flushed bright red. She got up from the bed and walked over to the window, her steps soft on the floor, and still somehow sounding like bombs going off in the silent room. She pushed aside the dresser with a surprising show of force. Her silk nightgown, light pink and hemmed in black, clung to her skin, hugging her hip bones as she whipped around and grabbed the thick red window blind. "Cristela, I need to see you. Need to see your face." She yanked the blind open, sunlight breaking in through the rest of the window, lighting me up like a spotlight turning on and aimed at my face. I squinted, the view I'd wanted blocked from sight now on full display. Outside my window, like a stupid fucking painting, was the Royal Palace Rose Garden, currently clinging to life through the frigid colds that had spilled over Madrid during the winter months. And yet still, even with the trees bare and the roses out of bloom, the garden somehow retained its imposing beauty. Maybe it was the golden statues scattered throughout, or the two perfectly symmetrical fountainheads on either side of the garden, shooting a constant stream of crystalline water feet up into the air. The emerald green hedges were still holding strong, as were the regal snowdrift crabapple trees we had planted when I was a little boy, their white and red flowers acting like small sun reflectors. Beyond the gardens I could see the tall crest of the palace itself, a stone spire that rose like a thorn on the side of this earth. It wrapped around the garden, making the roses and crabapple trees a centerpiece of the entire palace. I royally fucking hated it. "Look at me, Nicholas. Look at me and tell me you don't want this anymore. Us." "I'm sorry, but I can't be in this relationship any longer." I said it again, meaning it as much as the first time I'd said it. "So you're not joking? This isn't some kind of prank?" "I'm not joking. I can't continue this. I said the first word that came to my mouth. "Facade." She arched her eyebrow as though it were a bow ready to be notched with a lethal arrow. "A facade? You call what we had a facade?" "Si." I said it matter-of-factly, not because I felt it was that simple. Nothing ever really was that simple. I only said it in the way I did so that the point would be hammered home. She had to hear it. Cristela didn't do well when I beat around the bush. She always had a way of making me second-guess myself, and the more time I allowed her to do that, the more I risked backing down. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. I felt like I'd already tiptoed off the cliff's edge and was now free-falling through the air. Exhilarating, and there was no turning back. "Okay." Her head started to shake back and forth, a small movement. And then the tears started to flow. My heart cracked. I knew this would be painful as much as I knew it had to be done, but that didn't ease any of the guilt I felt at seeing her hurt. We had already talked about marriage, kids, a castle, crowns, the entire shebang. She must have been watching that all sink to the bottom of the sea, all her dreams slowly bubbling under the previously serene waters, now raging and tormenting. "Oh, Chris, don't do that." She covered her mouth, stifling a cry. Before I could say another word, she turned to the door and bolted. I got off the bed, not bothering to put on anything over my black boxers, and ran after her. Crossing the threshold of my bedroom was like crossing a portal into a fantasy land. An entire different world awaited outside of the doorway. Where my bedroom was simple and elegant, the grand hallway I was now running through felt extravagant and overly pompous. The ceiling was arched and elevated with gold filigree running throughout it, playing with the sunlight that bounced off the always polished white marble floors. There were enormous oil paintings hung up on either side of the hall, blurring past me as I ran, bare feet cold against the smooth floor. Holiday decorations had already been placed, leaving this moment all the more steeped in irony as I chased my crying ex-girlfriend past a row of silver and gold candy canes, directly underneath dangling mistletoes that appeared more like the blades of a guillotine than a Christmas decoration. "Cristela!" She turned into a bathroom and slammed the door shut, clicking the heavy lock into place just as I stopped myself from running past it, carried by momentum. I tried calling her name for a couple more minutes before I heard the click of heels coming from around the corner. I looked down and realized just how close to naked I was. Behind me, an arching window looked out over a small courtyard, devoid of anyone. Still, it wouldn't be long before those heels clicked their way around the corner. I cursed under my breath and turned on my feet, speed-walking down the hallway back toward my bedroom. There was nothing else I could do. I had broken poor Cristela's heart while trying to mend my own. Only time would tell if either of us would ever heal. "Nicholas?" I froze, shutting my eyes and wishing I could just vanish in a puff of smoke. Then I turned, facing my mother. She stood next to the window, the sun shining down on her and causing the sapphire necklace she wore to glow as endlessly blue as the sea itself. It popped against her pale skin, highlighted even more by the black dress she wore, cut just above the ankle and trimmed in silver lace with inlaid pearls. Meanwhile, I stood there with my ass practically showing. "Mom, are you okay?" She started toward me, heels clicking again. Yes, all good. I'm going to go shower." She squinted her eyes. Suspicion had been her middle name ever since I was a child testing the boundaries. She suspected everything I did, and always assumed there was a second story lying just underneath the first. She was right about today, so I'd give her that. "Aren't you leaving on your trip today?" "Tomorrow, actually." I started the trek back to my bedroom, not realizing just how much ground Cristela covered with her run. "Ah, bueno. I'll be asking you to meet with some people while you're overseas, some light diplomatic things. It won't interfere on your and Cristela's vacation, I promise." I ground my teeth. Aside from suspicion, my mother was also fond of surprises. She enjoyed springing things on people at the very last second, and I was now feeling the effects of that. Fine. If she was going to deal a surprise, then so would I. Cristela and I broke up. A tiny gasp sounded from behind me. I stopped at my bedroom door, a snow-dusted wreath hanging on the center of it. But, ¿qué? For once in her life, it seemed like the Queen was at a loss for words. "It wasn't working out. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm done with living for other people. I'm a prince, not a puppet. I gave it an honest shot and realized I wasn't happy. Done." She looked dumbfounded, and then the sound of more footsteps coming from the opposite end of the hall drifted toward us. My mother clicked back into Queen mode, straightening her shoulders and adopting a neutral expression before looking over my shoulder and offering a smile. "Ah, buenos dias, Luna." If I could breathe a sigh of relief without being too obvious, I sure as hell would have. I turned, smiling and offering a wave. Luna Rodriguez walked toward us, glancing at me with a mixture of concern and amusement. She was the head of my security team, and had watched my back since I could remember ever being worried about it. Behind her bounced Eli, my golden retriever and most trusted confidant. His tongue lolled out as he came over, crashing into my legs, rubbing his big head against my thighs. I pet him, scratching underneath his ears. "Is everything okay?" my mom asked. "Si," Luna answered. "Just came to ask some questions about the trip to America?" "Yeah, about that." I crouched down so that Eli could land some kisses on my cheek. "It's canceled." "Oh." Luna looked down in surprise. "So, where are you and Cristela going to?" "Also canceled." Her face snapped back up. She looked to my mother, who shot her a look before saying, "I have to go greet the Duchess. Please, Luna, talk some sense into this stubborn prince of mine." She kissed Luna's cheeks and then the top of my head before she whisked down the hall, heels clicking against the floor. I waited until she disappeared before saying, "I need to get out of here, Luna. I really need to go." "Did something happen?" She had her hands in her black slacks, her expression worried. "I'm finally doing something for myself," I said, standing back up. Eli sat down at my feet, looking like the happiest dog in the world. "So, if you have any suggestions on where I could run away to, I'd love to know." "Well," Luna said, thinking as I started to walk down the hall and back to my room. Luna and Eli followed. "Since I'm thinking about your America trip, my parents take a yearly holiday cruise from Miami. They spend something like 16 days in the Caribbean, and they absolutely love it. When they come back, they look like new people. My mom comes back with a boatload of glamour shots, and my dad's bald head comes back with a sunburn." "Perfect," I said. Being on a cruise ship where I'd know there weren't paparazzi hiding in every bush or tree I walked past sounded like paradise. Add the fact that I doubted I would be recognized by a crowd of vacationing Americans. They had fascinations with royal families that only seemed to extend to England's. Meanwhile, I couldn't walk through most any street in Europe without getting recognized. A spontaneous breakup and a Caribbean Christmas cruise. I wonder what other surprises this holiday's got in store for me. 2. Shiro Brooks. I rolled my suitcase up the smooth concrete ramp, the sun shining into my eyes as I looked up to try and admire the cruise ship. I flicked down my sunglasses, instantly feeling some relief. The ship towered above us in all its 17-deck glory. It was a modern marvel of science and the newest cruise ship to be sailing anywhere in the world. The paint job was a modern work of art, with bold red and blue lines that cut across the side of the ship, underneath the rows and rows of glass windows and balconies that made it almost seem as if the ship were a floating Apple store. A line started to form and curl in front of me as people were shuffled through the security checkpoint, leading into a large waiting area since it was still too early to board the ship. I looked around, knowing I wouldn't see any of my friends yet, but still hoping I'd catch a familiar smile. We haven't all been together in years. I was excited about this cruise, even if the past few weeks had been one hell of a ride getting here. No dwelling on the bullshit, though. This trip was about reuniting with old friends during the one season absolutely made for reunions, which worked especially well, since the cruise was advertised as a holiday wonderland. The entire ship was said to have been transformed for the holidays, from a giant stuffed polar bear wearing sunglasses by the pool to a snow pit where you could go and make snow angels after drinking a margarita. There were holiday-themed shows and dance clubs, along with a crazy sweater party and a sexy Santa dance-off. Apparently there was even a blizzard foam party planned. Needless to say, I had signed up real quick when I saw the ad. Thankfully, my friends were all on board for the trip, too. Ever since we scattered across the globe after graduating college, it had been hard to all be in the same spot. But these next 3 weeks were about to fix all that. I inched forward in line. My shoulders, tense all this past week, were finally relaxed. I took in a deep breath of the ocean air. Miami never got cold, but today was a little on the chillier side. At 71, native Miamians were pulling out their scarves and mittens. A commotion from behind me drew my attention. I leaned out of the line and glanced at the source of 2 loud, overly excited voices. "That's him, that's totally him," one of the girls was saying, almost shouting. She had a death grip on her friend's elbow, which I could see was beginning to lose color. "It is?" the one in danger of losing her arm asked. One of the boys they were with just shouts, "Are you that Avenger guy?" The girl with the loose ponytail shook her head, her cheeks turning a bright cherry red. "Not from Avengers, the brother. Liam. You're Liam Hemsworth?" I looked to see who they were talking to, and spot someone who had to have been a celebrity, and if they weren't, then they were working in the wrong field. The man wore a simple, all-black outfit with clean white sneakers and a watch with a worn leather band. He had a black hat on his head, the lip of it brought down so that the top half of his face was concealed in shadow. The lower half, though, damn! That was more than enough for me. He had a little bit of well-taken-care-of scruff, trimmed to the skin at his Adam's apple and down. His lips were drawn into an entertained smirk, slanting in the same way his jawline did. "No," I heard him say. "I'm no one." The dad of the 2 girls picked up on the situation. He apologized and brought the girls back to their spot in line, which they had apparently jumped to try and get a better look at the mystery no one. I didn't blame them, either. "Excuse me, sir? The line's moving?" "Oh, shoot, sorry," I said, turning and realizing I had been standing still while a good 4-foot gap formed in the line as people shuffled forward. I made sure not to slip on the drool that had pooled at my feet. Clearly, I was a little boy crazy, which I shouldn't be, considering that the guy I'd been dating for the past year broke up with me because he saw a documentary on a religion dedicated to the Rolling Stones and decided to go join it. When I said abso-fucking-lutely not to joining when he asked, he said he understood, but that we wouldn't be able to stay together. I had thought it was an elaborate prank for a good half hour until I realized he was being fully serious. "Can you even name one Rolling Stones song?" I remembered asking him. He rattled off a couple titles, none of them sounding familiar to me, which wasn't a surprise seeing as how I for sure wouldn't be able to name a single Rolling Stones song. The security checkpoint cleared up ahead. I went through, letting them check my suitcase and scan me with those metal wands. The security officer, Lionel, read the tag with a tiny mistletoe over his name, asked me to turn around. I faced the rest of the line, my gaze instantly finding that mysterious man with the sexy jaw and the cap, which was now flipped so that I could see the rest of his face. Holy crapola! This man was everything. I wasn't sure what I liked better, the top half of his face or the previously introduced bottom half. Then again, why not have both? His eyes. Wow, they were multidimensional, like two little blue and gray galaxies held inside the most perfectly sculpted face. He had a strong brow and thick eyebrows that added a frame to a picture I could stare at all day and night. Especially night. Lionel waved the wand over my shoulder and down my back before he ran it over the front of my chest, and then down over my shorts. A loud beeping sounded directly above my penis. Oh, that's, weird. Lionel tried again. More beeping as he held the wand right on top of my crotch. I could see people in line beginning to look in my direction, but thankfully the handsome man straight out of my dreams, and most likely my league, had his attention held by something on his phone. I guessed that I had approximately 15 seconds before he looked up and saw me getting dragged away for a weaponized penis. It's nothing, I said, turning to Lionel. The zipper, maybe? Do you have any piercings? Oh, no, just the thought of that is making me contract into my own body. I pursed my lips. Which is probably too much information. We have an area to the left where another agent can check you. Lionel motioned to what appeared to be a makeshift change room, ignoring my mention of an inverting dick. It was a circular area concealed by a wrinkled blue sheet. I wanted to roll my eyes and assure Lionel I had nothing between my legs that needed to be checked, at least not by security. But on the same token, he was just doing his job and making sure every passenger stayed safe. I turned and walked to another security officer who led me into the changing room. I think my zipper triggered it. The officer, a muscular guy with an impressive forearm tattoo of a roaring lion, offered me a surprisingly apologetic smile.
The sensor's been a little sensitive. I'm just going to ask you to take your shorts and shirt off for a quick check, and then you can board.
I glanced around at the flimsy blue curtain. If I looked hard enough, I could make out faces through small holes that dotted the fabric. I felt my cheeks turn a fiery red, not because I had to have a surprise strip search, but because that handsome god of a man was standing feet away from me as I began to undress. It was an odd place for my brain to go, but I couldn't help it as I started to wonder if he could see me, if he could see the shape of me through the shadows on the curtain. I took off my shirt and went for my shorts next, not remembering what underwear I had put on, but knowing that it at least wasn't one of my jockstraps. I unzipped my shorts and took them off. My briefs were bright yellow with cartoon bananas playfully placed around them. The band around my hips was jet black. I faced the officer and tried not to think about the fact that my briefs looked a little more full than they normally did. Handsome Capman is doing things to me without even being near me. The officer used the wand again, quickly swiping it up and down, the machine staying quiet this time. Then he personally checked my shorts, flipping the pockets inside out. When he was done, he handed me back my shorts and turned around so I could change. Is that it? I asked.
Yep, that's it. Thanks for cooperating.
I nodded and hummed as I lifted a leg to put my shorts back on. That's when things went from fine to what in the actual fuck is my life all in about 15 seconds flat. As I was lifting my leg, I lost my balance. Normally, I'm not a clumsy guy. I competed in gymnastics all throughout high school and college, even making it up to the Olympic qualifiers before I took a terrible fall off the pommel horse and had to take 2 years off to recover. Since then, I never got back into gymnastics, instead finding a new passion in parkour, joining a team who'd practice inside of one of their home gyms before we went out to the streets. This meant that I could stick a landing, but only when that landing wasn't concealed by a flimsy blue curtain. I snatched for it, hearing a loud tear as the fabric fell with me. I rolled up in the thing like a blue...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?